200,000 corpses in 6 weeks. Between December 1937 and January 1938, a sanctioned catastrophe struck the Chinese capital. Before the invasion, Nanking held a population of roughly 500,000 residents. As military commanders replaced conventional warfare with systematic execution campaigns, the ultimate death toll rapidly approached 300,000 victims. 200,000 displaced citizens filled the international safety zone, hoping that foreign borders would enforce international law. A German businessman named John Rabe stayed behind, recording the daily slaughter while dry diary pages rustled beneath his moving pen. A decade later, these exact handwritten notebooks would become the foundational evidence for international war crimes tribunals. The fragile illusion of diplomatic sanctuary ultimately failed to hold back the imperial army. Japanese infantrymen blatantly ignored the recognized boundary markers. Armed squads marched into the protected compounds and dragged sheltering families directly out onto the ruined streets. Factories produced heavy firearms by the millions, but cold steel defined military officers. John Rabe recorded this rigid ideology. The general staff deployed it everywhere. The Mukden incident sparked the initial invasion. 1931 brought fake railway explosions. Imperial troops seized Manchuria within a few months. It directly mirrored the infamous Gleiwitz incident. Europe faced this exact tactic 8 years later. Northern defenses crumbled. Beijing fell. Shanghai collapsed. Troops marched rapidly toward the capital of Nanjing. The army enforced the ancient Bushido code. Doctrine ruled. Field commanders never lost their tactical control. Hesitation meant weakness. Killing meant devotion. Swords were mandatory uniform gear for all ranks. Blades hung firmly on every officer hip. The imperial headquarters officially recognized mass civilian executions as a legitimate demonstration of military discipline. A journalist dictates numbers over a crackling radio frequency. An editor slaps those digits straight onto the front page. The ancient Bushido code reached civilian households directly through the lead editorials of the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun. Telegrams arrived constantly from the front lines, and typesetters scrambled to assemble the heavy metal text blocks for the morning edition. The sharp, chemical smell of fresh printing ink filled the press rooms before dawn on December 4th. Second Lieutenants Toshiaki Mukai and Tsuyoshi Noda were racing to execute 100 prisoners first. The public read these daily updates with the casual excitement of a morning baseball summary. In reality, bound men knelt in the dirt while officers hacked through their necks with steel blades. The Tokyo Nichi Shimbun dominated the national media market. Its daily circulation surpassed 1 million printed copies. Entire families tracked the execution contest over breakfast. The December 4th edition announced Mukai holding an 86-65 lead. 24 hours later, new telegraphs arrived from Nanjing. By December 5th, the printed tally stood at 89 against 78. Captain Gunkichi Tanaka stood before a row of bound men. He drew his blade. The heavy steel scraped loudly against the wooden scabbard. 300 prisoners fell to their knees in the dirt. Tanaka raised the weapon. He delivered strikes one by one. The officers carried the Type 94 Shin-Gunto sword. The blade required constant wiping. Blood stained the uniform. While 2 junior lieutenants chased 100 victims for newspaper fame, this senior commander executed 300. The date was December 13, 1937. Japan mobilized over 1 million soldiers for the China campaign. The military operations required commanders with formal academic backgrounds. Tanaka was born on March 19, 1905. He was not an undisciplined recruit breaking under combat stress. He represented the state. He graduated from the Imperial Japanese Army Academy. The institution modeled its curriculum on Prussian military manuals. This academy produced a professional officer class, holding a status equal to graduates of West Point in the United States. West Point opened in 1802. The Japanese equivalent launched in 1868. Tanaka underwent years of tactical training at the Osaka and Sagamihara campuses. He studied battlefield logistics, artillery mathematics, and traditional martial arts. Thousands applied annually. Only a fraction received the commission. Tanaka knew what international military law permitted. He understood the rules regarding prisoners of war. He simply ignored them. The slaughter of 300 surrendered captives was a calculated decision. An educated leader orchestrated the executions. He felt no need to conceal the acts in the ruined capital. The captain gave a boastful interview to the national press regarding his personal kill count. In 1937, he entered the city as a conqueror. 10 years later, he returned in handcuffs. His boastful press interviews became a formal extradition warrant. Japan surrendered unconditionally on September 2, 1945. The geopolitical landscape completely shifted. Allied forces immediately demanded strict accountability. The Tokyo trials launched in 1946. The International Military Tribunal indicted 28 top leaders. They targeted prime ministers, generals, diplomats, politicians. But those high-level proceedings ignored the bloody trenches. The localized Class B and Class C tribunals filled this crucial gap. They explicitly prosecuted the direct perpetrators. They hunted the ground-level executioners. They tracked the men holding the swords. On May 14, 1947, the net closed. Authorities approved a formal transfer request for the captain. Military police moved him along a very specific convoy route. First, a heavily guarded maritime transport shipped him to Shanghai. Then, a secure train carried him directly into Nanjing. He traveled the exact path of his previous invasion. He returned to the very streets he helped destroy. His own published words built the entire prosecution case. The kill counts he cited to journalists remained in the archives. Confession meant pure honor in wartime society. Now, it meant certain guilt. He stood trial alongside Mukai and Noda. 3 men faced the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal. They faced the broken families. The defense lawyers tried familiar legal tactics. They blamed strict military orders. They cited chaos. The court flatly rejected every single argument. The international geopolitical mandate required clear local justice. No excuses, no compromises. They failed. The prosecution proved deliberate mass executions. The presiding judge read the final death sentences aloud to all 3 standing military officers. How do you prove 300 executions almost a decade later? Investigators systematically unearthed the defendant's personal archives. The Nanking War Crimes Tribunal faced a monumental numerical burden to establish legal certainty. 7 to 8 executions daily. 42 days straight. Skeptics frequently argued that such extraordinary figures were merely exaggerated by post-war pressures and the chaotic fog of combat. Yet the physical mechanics of this 6-week massacre required dedicating at least 1 hour daily strictly to beheading. Established in February 1946, the court favored rigid procedural scrutiny over emotional rhetoric. Inside the courtroom, the rhythmic clatter of a heavy mechanical typewriter documented every spoken testimony for the official record. Presiding judges meticulously cross-referenced translated statements from former soldiers with arrogant claims Tanaka published during the invasion. They matched dates, locations, and explicit casualty counts from multiple independent sources across the destroyed capital. The final legal phrasing explicitly rejected the defense of chaotic combat mistakes. Judges confirmed the deliberate decisions of a commissioned officer executing unarmed targets. The tribunal formalized its final conclusion. Defense lawyers cited the chaos of war. Prosecutors placed newspaper clippings on the table. The Nanjing Tribunal faced immense pressure. Justice moved fast. China demanded blood. The Allies wanted immediate historical closure. Nobody planned years of complex appeals. Critics attacked the rapid legal proceedings. They questioned the absent cross-examinations. Critics sounded plausible. Evidence held fast. Western journalists watched the slaughter unfold. Foreign diplomats recorded the daily executions. The year was 1937. These observers lacked political motives. They refused to fabricate mass killings. truth remained clear. A German citizen testified against a Japanese officer. He spoke inside a Chinese military court. John Rabe was a German national. He was neither Chinese nor American. His homeland allied with Imperial Japan. They signed the Anti-Comintern Pact. This made his diaries legally flawless. The tribunal accepted them without hesitation. Rabe wrote daily. He documented the horrors firsthand. Tanaka gave his own independent statements. The case avoided dark back rooms. The verdict rested on undeniable proof. The entire extensive paper trail of daily executions was meticulously created and preserved by the defendant himself. January 28, 42 years. His own documentary trail eventually led the former captain to the execution grounds in 1948. The local military tribunal delivered the verdict, bypassing the gallows usually reserved for high-ranking political targets in Tokyo. Standard military protocol dictated a simple firing squad, effectively stripping away any samurai romanticism associated with the traditional blade. Armed guards escorted the condemned officer out into the biting frost of the early winter morning. A sharp command echoed across the open training field, and a synchronized rifle volley shattered the crisp morning air. His bleeding body collapsed heavily onto the frozen earth of Nanking. The final military bullet abruptly ended the life of the captain. How many commanders escaped trial? Tens of thousands secured immunity. A bullet for Tanaka meant nothing. Emperor Hirohito kept his throne. He faced no charges. The American occupation needed him. The Soviet Union expanded fast. The Cold War dictated terms. American diplomats reviewed endless prisoner lists. They sat in Tokyo. A fountain pen scratched across pardon documents. Diplomats crossed names off the lists. Washington initiated a political trade. General Shiro Ishii commanded Unit 731. His human experiments killed thousands. He traded his biological data. Washington granted him full immunity. Tribunals targeted low-ranking perpetrators. Top officials reclaimed power. Washington commuted death sentences. Prison doors opened. Justice stopped. Clerks sealed files. Evidence vanished. Men walked out. Former commanders regained posts. America cemented its Asian anchor. 4 decades of Cold War confrontation followed. The post-war settlement prioritized state interests over the blood of 300,000 victims in Nanjing. The rest walked free. 300 unarmed people. The sovereign kept his status in Tokyo, but the families of those victims found no answers after December 1937. They were prisoners of war. Ordinary civilians. The military tribunal verified their status as captured and defenseless. Men and women lost their names in the chaos of the fallen capital. Decades later, excavation crews unearthed mass graves along the banks of the Yangtze River. The shattered skulls and buried bones matched the precise archival numbers from the international trials. Missionary diaries and daily logs from the International Committee documented the methodical slaughter. The safety zone sheltered 200,000 desperate refugees within its narrow borders. Outside those gates, the killing continued without interruption. The scale of the massacre in the city was never a random tragedy of combat. It was a deliberate strategy implemented by individual men on the ground. Captain Tanaka swung his blade. He fired his weapon into the crowds. He made that lethal decision 300 times. On January 28, 1948, the firing squad in Nanjing made its choice exactly 1 time.